My Family Thinks I'm Crazy, a podcast where I, your host, try to give you some tips on how you can explain all this weird, wild, crazy conspiracy stuff to the people you love most. Because that's what I've been trying to do for the past 10 years with no success.
I've been telling everybody that our government is shady, but every time I do, my family thinks I'm crazy. The hollow earth, UFOs, aliens invading, fluoride in the water, they spray our skies daily. When I talk about these things, they think I'm crazy. There's no escaping anymore the evil that we're facing. Illuminati mind control, they're sacrificing babies. The end of days, but anyways, my family thinks I'm crazy.
What, they don't want to listen to you?
No, they don't want to listen. They don't want to hear it. They're just like, oh, here we go, Mark. Off again with your...
Mark being Mark again.
Yeah. So, you know, that's the thing about podcasts is when you're on the air, and it's like therapy, you know? If I can't talk to my family about this stuff, I'll talk to you, Matt, and all our listeners.
You just tell your whole podcast.
Yeah. So who are we talking about today, Matt?
They think that I'm crazy. They really think that I'm crazy. They really think that I'm crazy. My family thinks that I'm crazy.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning into another edition of the My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast. I'm your lovable host, Mark Palmer, investigator of all things weird, researcher of all things occult, journeyer into the mystic realms of the everyday and the other world. Either way, we're here today with Randy. I call him Randy the Tartarian because he's got a whole nother style. He's into Tartaria. He's into researching what there really is to be seen. When you take a look at some of these town hall buildings and churches and structures that seem to have layers going underground, or maybe we're in places that have been dug up, it's fascinating stuff, and I was happy to have him on for his first podcast ever. So we kind of went all over the place as... he was definitely excited. He told me he listens to the show, so it's cool. It's cool to have someone who's listened to something from my heart and soul, my mind. And I want to remind everybody that this is my purpose that I sought out when I was younger. I was venturing into psychedelics, smoking weed every day, reading these books. And I told myself, I was going to find my higher purpose and align myself with that. I created that intention to help others, to help the little ones, the children and the animals and all the small creatures of the earth that create life that we all are so grateful for. I know I am. So just a reminder, folks, set your intentions high. This is a love cast. It's all love, and show Randy some love and kindness because, like I said, this was his first time ever on a podcast, and I think he was very, very well researched. He had some really interesting pictures to show us, so please, if you got the love bug like I do, go over to patreon.com/MFTIC and show us some love. We'd love to see you there. Join the family. And that's where the scene is at, the synchro-mystic exploration of the ever-expanding now. And on our latest journey, we went to Makamuda State Park, and you can hear all the information about that on our Patreon. As we heard some really interesting moodus noises. Definitely Google search that, MOODUS noises. Either way, enjoy this conversation with Randy the Tartarian, and please, we'll see you over on the other side, patreon.com/MFTIC, or buymeacoffee/MFTIC. Soon there'll be audio there. And also, we're on Rockfin, rockfin.com. My Family Thinks I'm Crazy. You can search us there. Check us out on Twitter at MFTIC Podcast, or you can go over to Instagram at My Family Thinks I'm Crazy.
It kind of makes you wonder what's really going on. We are sitting on a giant microchip that was built to render the reality around us. So essentially, you can call it a simulation. You can call it an experience. I'm glad that our families think we're crazy. A lot of these places have negative energy. They have vibes. There are voices that will reach out to you. There are things that will connect with you in these places around these energies, because it's so profound. Something so drastic and dramatic happened that I mean, if you've ever gone and walked down railroad tracks in the middle of America, it is not a fun feeling. You know, the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, not on the tracks, of course, but like right next to them. Something about railroad tracks. Nurse, you know. I understand that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. I wanted to get going here because I know my man Randy, once you get started, it's hard to stop you. And I'm excited that we can get this all on record because this is a first for you. Is this the first time you've been on a podcast?
Well, yeah. As a matter of fact, it is. I mean, it's always something I've aspired to do. I'm a very outgoing person, you know, and man, it's just rough out there in the world. You try to be kind and decent to people and outgoing, and man, talk about getting shut down by the zombies out there. It's different, you know. It's not what I thought it was going to be when I was 10 years old or even 20 for that matter. Right. So, and you know, I run this stuff by my mom and stuff. She just rolls her eyes and says, you know, what are you smoking this time? Pretty much the consensus, you know, amongst a vast majority of people, especially here in Iowa. I mean, very, very conservative. Very just agriculture driven, very kind of mellow lifestyle. Yeah. Everybody's got their own specific thing going on. And I mean, my specific thing is just outlandish. You know, I was telemarketing back in 2011. I started looking into chemtrails and all the Morgellons and all the crazy stuff going on. With a father that was in the aerospace industry, you know, I understood what the technology could do, being the different air shows and different types of technology venues and showings. Seeing things like not the hydrogel, you know, the bishop talks about and the vaccines, but aerogel. Mm. It's the most heat resistant, least dense. It's insane. It's basically nanotubes, but apparently it's something that we didn't make, something I was told. So go off of that. I would rather go on word of mouth or kind of intuition than what we are told, you know, in mainstream media or even in our history books. You know, you can go to Library of Congress online, dig through stuff for hours and hours and come up with very little actual information. It's just fluff words that sound big and bad and make it feel like you're getting some information. And really all they're telling you is the bare minimum. Like it's just an outline sketch of the picture. Right. And so running into this time and time again, you know, it gets frustrating. It gets unnerving. It kind of makes you wonder what's really going on. And you know, I had the opportunity to listen to, oh man, I think it was like Revolution Radio or something, you know, I was surfing through some things and come across a lady by the name of Michelle. I don't have her last name offhand and I don't want to butcher anything. So we'll just go with that. And she had a really interesting take on things and it was really thorough. We're talking how everything fits together. Long story short, the way I kind of put it into words is we are sitting on a giant microchip that was built to render the reality around us. So essentially, you could call it a simulation. You can call it an experience. You can call it an endeavor, whatever you'd like, really. But I choose to call it mine, you know, and anybody that wants to take that away from me needs to just kind of lay by the wayside. And it's very difficult when you start developing attachments to people who, you know, in the deep, deep part of them, they're really decent people, really kind-hearted and all that, but they're just stuck in the loop. And, you know, they're rolling along in this black mirror world we live in, watching the news as, you know, the Cuban dictator up north ships in all the Afghans. And it's just wild, man. It's like, you know, like Sam Tripoli kind of states, it's every, I don't know, he says every movie, I say every B movie put together, lived out all at once. So it's a wild world we live in. Let me see if I can't get the information up that we were talking about out here.
Yeah, we want to get into Tartaria. I know Dude, we're getting right off to the races here on some more futuristic stuff, but
I've got this right here, bro. I've been looking through every freaking town hall, oh geez, it's ridiculous, man. This is Los Angeles here in 1969 or 1869 rather. Let's see if I can't pull this up and get it rolling along here. Bear with me. I'm not necessarily new, just rolling a laptop that's got a bunch of junk apps on it. So borrows. All right, there we go. So let's get this pulled up here. All right, let's share this right here. All right. Okay, so this is what they're telling you is Los Angeles, right? 1869. You know, looks pretty shanty town to me, if you want to put it like that. So let's see if we can't get in on it. Zoom in a little bit here. Now, the first thing you're going to notice is the style of the stone architecture here. What one might call Moorish, or possibly late Greco-Roman, early industrial age, right? And this is 1869, prior to the massive influx of people, coming from San Francisco after the fire, quote unquote. And oh man, that Frisco fire, I've got quite the little snip of pictures that if you come closely, it's just hilarious what they try to pass as reality in these films. I mean, you can tell just by the way the fire acts, the way the fire looks. It's not a firestorm in a city. It's a model set on fire. And the audacity is just mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing. So we'll go ahead and take a look at a couple other things here. Let's see if I can't go ahead and kind of drag us over. And you'll notice the angle at which the dirt sits here. Okay. And this is just kind of a familiar scene just about everywhere that you look, every major city, even minor cities, little minor capitals. Des Moines, Iowa, for example, that Capitol building is just beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. And you'll see that they're buried. They're halfway buried, especially this one here, right here. Now, you go up the hill, you can see they dug everything out, made a little trail there. So we're dealing with something that is just basically hidden history. So esoteric, the same kind of thing we've all talked about, looked into, tried to figure out. And ultimately, the part that's kind of crucial and it's kind of frustrating is we are not allowed to know exactly what happened. And so this is Marshalltown, Iowa, a small town that now hosts a meat plant and a power plant. And that's more or less it, an air conditioning company. So you're going to notice again and again the same style of architecture here on every main street, just about in America. And you see the spires there, reminiscent of, I don't know, just about every civilization that you see that has built star forts. They would call them cathedrals. Okay. There's a gentleman, I'm trying to draw his name off the top of my head. He's an alchemist and he's into hidden history and he's looking at these cathedrals, noticing that the statues themselves are telling stories. So if you go down into, this is a good one right here. This is what they would call a panoramic view, right? Why they're whitewashed, we can pretty much assume we're just not supposed to see what this is out here. And I'll tell you right now, it's not the ocean. This is Los Angeles, if I'm not mistaken. Let's zoom in and take a look so I don't look silly saying that it is when it isn't. All right. And of course, sorry, let's see, Jacksonville, Florida, my bad. But the architecture is the same everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. West Virginia, Oregon, Idaho. I mean, you name it, it's exactly the same. And right around the same time period, 1850, we had the gold rush in 1849. Supposedly the railroads were built to facilitate the gold rush and, the transit west after, quote unquote, the War of 1812 and was it Indian American War, the French Indian War? Everybody was supposedly fighting. Okay. And if you look back far enough or you talk to enough elders or you have enough discussions with enough people that have really sat down and analyzed the literature that is available, things like, let's see if I can't get to it for you. It'll just take one moment. But as I'm doing that, let me go ahead and pull up here just so that we're not kind of lagging time. Let's go bigger.
Don't worry about that. I mean, there's so much to look at in these
Here's the
photos here. Yeah.
Here's the page, the splash page, right?
Right.
You just come into it and you're like, okay, I'm going to look and see what's going on. History of American buildings. These are just sketches, man. Every last one. There's not a single blueprint. There may be one out of like the 50 or 60 I've looked through. And I mean, we're talking absolutely everywhere. You'll just see sketches. You'll see pictures, a lot of different types of things, but you'll see some similarities. And it's just absolutely mind blowing. The fact that they've demolished some of these and said they were older than others. I mean, man, that mud fossil guy, first glance, man, I really didn't start paying it any mind until I started to look at the architecture of these buildings. Okay, you've got these little onion domes and, nice brickwork. And generally speaking, there's a floor that's kind of half submerged. And you'll see that a lot. And it's not just in Russia, it's not just the Cathars or, you know what I mean, the what are now Chinese, Mongolian, Russian, Chechenian, so on and so forth. It's not just absolutely Manchurian, Mongolian, you name it. The steppes of Mongolia, man. These people didn't run around wearing leather and pitching tents and grow their family tree to such an extent. Let's see if I can't pull it off my phone, but here's a really good one. This one's in Alaska. Okay. What is that doing in Alaska? St. George. Dude, this is a Russian onion style building. And you'll see the plank work over the brick. And that happens a lot. They just refinish them. Let's make them look like everything else on the block, aside from the actual mechanism here, which is exactly what this is. This is not a fancy hat. Okay. You'll see buildings with similar situations going on up here.
And pulling up the building, I don't see the latest slide.
Hold on. Inadvertently. Just a second. Let's resume. My bad. Sorry about that. Oh, I didn't realize I had paused there. I must have slipped out. Okay. So here's one that's going to be Chicago in 1915. And you'll notice this 1915 picture, there's nothing that's demolished. Nothing looks like it's ever been burned down. Nothing relatively leaning or smoking or crumbling. And this is supposedly, 6 years after the big fire. And I think about 25 years after the Great Conflagration. Okay. That's what they called it. And it was just a massive devastation. All of these situations, all of these turning points in history are purpose built to drive a certain emotional, a certain logical, a certain spiritual response, not just from one person, not just from one group, but from absolutely everybody. Everybody who's ever been born since probably about 1850 has been fed the word of law, which is essentially Roman, or you can call it, I know Sam gets into it. He's like Jesuit this, Jesuit. Dude, Jesuits are just pawns, man. They're just people there's the men in black. All right. There's men in white, if not many, that are sitting somewhere and just cracking up, laughing at the fact that we're all buying the CDs. We're all wearing the Nikes. We're all rocking the headphones. And, we've got information that essentially leads us down a path where you've got women using cell phones like 1915. There's pictures of it. Those old school World War I or World War II radios that you crank up just like that, but with a handheld unit talking to each other and stuff. How they do that? Well, let's see if I can find one for you real quick here. It's probably not real quick because these are really massive size files. So this is what was an airship hangar, and they turned it into a giant swimming pool. Look at that, complete with slides, and they even took out some of the roof to make it all nice and sunny in there, but just enough shade, just enough water. So that tells you something. It's either a submarine port, an airship port. We could have used it for multiple purposes. It's an absolutely massive building. I want to try to get into Redondo Beach, things like that. So you'll notice, like I was saying here, we got towers, water towers, supposedly, right? Bay windows. Didn't know that was a thing back in the 1900s. But you'll see spires all the way back here. I've got better pictures than this. Let's go ahead and go through here. And every single one, and this is going to be, if I'm not mistaken, this is like an Avalon or something to that effect. And they pretty much just tore all the lumber out of California and just stripped it, purpose built for their own amusement kind of a situation. Look at this. Redondo Beach. Who in their right mind will put this massive building right on the water, right on the sand? Okay. And I mean, look at the size of the doors, the windows. You even see these telephone poles that have 1, 2, 3, 4 crossbars on them. Everywhere these 4 crossbar telephone poles are, there are no wires on these. Okay. Now there are on the 2 up here. You'll see that. But every picture you see with the ones with 4, that's it. Those are just relay towers. They were sending radio waves. They were sending signals pretty much as far back as what we're told is ancient Egypt, that 2,500 years ago, 3,000, 6,000, it doesn't matter. It's always been there. These are what were called God's gift at one point. The information of frequency, sound, vibration, harmony. These are all things that, are very spiritual, very meaningful to, I would say, a minority of people, actually, not a majority, unfortunately. And if the majority were the case in this matter, I feel like we would be in a different situation. We wouldn't be riding on the fear vibe so hard, and that's all any of it was. It's all just, hey, let's build a city of fear, let's cram everyone together, let's steal the old stuff, unbury it. And I'm trying to get to some that are, there we go. So you see the architecture here is just amazing, absolutely amazing. And you see this in the center here in the quad. Look at the size of that. How in 1819, look at, you got horse-drawn carriages. You've got like Model Ts, Model As. And then you've got this thing, which is at least probably 15 to 20 stories, if not higher. And it's just a pillar with a statue.
Right.
Right.
They have one very similar in the center of Indianapolis.
Oh, they're everywhere. Absolutely.
I remember that. I think it's called the Soldiers and Sailors Monument. There's one
Absolutely. Yeah.
Norwich, Connecticut that we saw. And yeah, the one in Norwich, I remember a little better because I saw it more recently, but it had a woman at the top of it, a statue of her, and she's holding a giant feather. And I think there was a seagull that was perched on her head. It wasn't part of the statue, but it was from my photo. People can go to Instagram to check that out. But yeah, I mean, these statues and monuments, especially
they're
obelisks, they're
massive. They dwarf anything in ancient Egypt or what we're told is ancient Egypt. Okay. They're just absolutely amazing. Okay. You cannot put a price on something or of an adjective on something that is just beyond words because it's beyond us. I mean, it came from a different time, a different, I don't know, frequency, dimension. It's kind of hard to say how this all worked out in the very beginning. A lot of people are like, oh, it's just energy weapons. They blew everything up in San Diego, and got a film on here somewhere that's riding down one of the streets in San Diego prior to the fire, then after. But if you look at it real close, it almost looks like they flipped the script on that one. But this is a bastion fort is the going term at the moment. Now, if you ever look into the Great Lakes, okay, for example, Chicago is a big one. And I've got so many pictures on it. It's insane. Let's see. This is Miami Beach. Look at this building. What's the point? What's the point in 1930? How is that even possible to have and this building is supposedly like, I think 102 or 3 years old at this time. So it's from like the 1820s, they say. There's nothing prior to 1800. You can dig through archives all day long. You're not going to find anything substantial from prior to the Civil War. Now you're going to find lots and lots of Civil War photos. You're going to find lots and lots of stories about the Underground Railroad and things like that. But the part they don't tell you is underneath every city, underneath every one of these massive buildings, there are aquifers. There are subways, essentially. There are pneumatic tubes. We've got pictures of them in Chicago. And, you can pretty much pull these up just by typing in Chicago pneumatic tube line. Boom, pulls it up, right? The story is what's twisted around. It's like, oh, this was invented, after the electric railroad. This is something else right here. This is Miami. after, well, that's a hurricane for you. But look at these buildings. Are they building them? Are they tearing them down? It's kind of hard to say unless you have pictures that are dated and you can rely on the dating. Now, even small hometowns, you look at these harbor towns, you look at these bridges. These are absolutely massive bridges with stone foundations and footings. Some of them pivot to let the ships through, which is pretty heavy technology for that day. So Army Corps engineers, either a pat on the back or it's just a bluff. I'll let you decide. So, I mean, was always a dream of mine to get involved with building, hands-on repair work, manipulation of solid materials. And, the more you dig into this tangible reality we live in, the more you realize that there's a lot more inside of you and every other person than you'll ever understand. And that's really where it's at, because this is just strip mall population centers. That's it. Everywhere. And most of these they dug out. Now they're the ones with the spires and all the ornamental bronze and gold and, oh geez, a lot of copper. And they've wound this around. If you look at the pillars, they've wound this around the inside such that it creates a current, a standing wave current. It's a static electricity alternating current. That's why you need water underneath these buildings, because it bounces it back up to the top of the building. So you're getting a reverberation. It's causing a stream of electricity throughout the building. You ever seen Addams Family? I mean, most people have. And you wonder, like, hey, why is Uncle Fester wearing wool and sticking light bulbs in his mouth to light him up, right? If you lived in one of these houses with these spires, let me see if I can pull one up for you here. And then, amazing. There's a lot of colleges and stuff, and the colleges are a whole nother story. Look at that, man. It's amazing. All those spires, all those flags, that's all essentially imbuing the building with electricity. Okay. It's different than what we know. It's not going to power the beefy, inefficient, popular mechanisms we use today, but it'll light street lights. It'll send telegrams. So you got those telegram posts again. And this is, 1909. Okay. So we're talking turn of the century. Everybody's wearing the same clothes. Man, I've got one on here where there's a little booth sitting outside and it says good clothes right next to the barber shop. And it's just like, wow, if you're putting that out there and that's all there is on the street aside from furniture, you're filling up something that's already there. You've got an entire story underneath you buried. And they say, oh, it's just a subfloor. Man, if you've ever gone down into your local, if you have a local post office, for example, or a city hall, and it's Romanesque or classic architecture, see if you can't go downstairs, schmooze somebody, give them $5-10 and get in that elevator and go down. There's always at least 2 or 3 subfloors. And these subfloors have 10-foot plus high ceilings, usually probably around 14 feet, which is insane for, the height of humans nowadays.
Right.
It's mind blowing. It keeps me up at night, and I'm fortunate enough to have people in my life, very few, granted, that understand that I'm inquisitive. I want to find out what's going on just so that I can feel at ease, just so that I can understand where I came from, where my energy was born, how I got to this realm. How am I going to get out of this realm? Am I going to take an easy way out, a hard way out? Am I going to buy into the story? And, it is choose your own adventure after all. I mean, never thought that when I threw on Sam's podcast the first time that I'd be sitting here talking to you. And, I think yours was the second or third one that I got into. And I was like, absolutely. I know where this guy's coming from,
Thank you.
And it's crazy when you look your mom in the face and she gives you a look like, man, you need to go to rehab or, an institution or something. But, the reaction my son has given me through all this, especially going so far as to tell the teacher the world is flat at school. I can get reprimanded for that, but not for curse words, blows my mind. So it's just to be surrounded by positive, like-minded people, or even if they're just open to suggestion.
Well, let me circle back in and ask you a question here, because we have the pattern emerging, right? People can pretty easily recognize that spires, as you laid out, bronze and copper are very, common materials in these builds. Are there any other, patterns or significant features to these buildings that we should be aware of so that folks in their own town can start identifying these buildings?
Absolutely. And let me get into your basic hometown. Okay. These are university or school buildings, they're called. And this is some of the architecture you're going to look for in your hometown, in your capital, and right around the colleges in your area, say Portland, Salem. It really doesn't matter where you are. And that's the mind blowing thing. At first I was like, oh, I need to go to Russia and check out this mud flood business, right? Or I need to go to India and look at, the temples. And while those are spectacular, these are your average, we'll call middle class structures here. And some of them are turned into schools, hospitals, insane asylums are a big one. And they got to house all the people that don't go along with the storyline, right? And I'm just glad I'm not here 100 years ago, or I would be in one of those buildings probably. So cheers to that.
Right on.
But, they're like I was saying about the Addams family. Now, that's another one that you're going to see periodically. You're going to see a house that has a roof that slopes up, probably at about a 70-degree angle or something, and it comes to a point and we'll have like 4 flag posts out of the one peak. Okay. And there's a specific structure, and this is going to be, am I still sharing? Yeah. All right, good. Let's go back to the beginning here. It's right on the first page here. If I can get back to it. Sorry about the tapping once more. This is going to be just about it here, if it'll allow me to look at it. I think it was on the 3rd or 4th page last time I checked. So let's take a look here. Absolutely everywhere, though. I mean, coastal cities, sure. Got that. God, I wish I could zoom in like on my phone. It'd be so simple. Okay, you're going to see a lot of spires, a lot of onion domes. You can see a lot of bay windows. Okay. The biggest thing you're going to see is subfloors that are just spectacular. They've got pillars, they've got limestone, they've got features that you wouldn't expect from a building that was born in the mid 1900s. And Jesus, give me all the same. They're really good at archiving these to where it takes hours and hours to find something.
It looks like some people playing Ring Around the Rosie, some men, on the other side playing some kind of sport there, stretching. And then we have like the center, but it is reminiscent of a lot of buildings here in New England, especially in the older, more industrial towns. But yeah, it's fascinating when you start digging into the area you're in. Tara, my girlfriend, and I, we were driving through a town called Ansonia, Connecticut, and we happened to see these blue signs. And, I think Pennsylvania, New York, Connecticut, I'm sure most states have these blue signs that will tell you a little bit about the historical significance of a certain area. So we drive to this place, just randomly see a sign, stop. And it was August 19th when we see this sign, Randy. And I swear, the sign said on August 19th in 1955, a great flood happened, and the flood line was as tall as the sign, and the sign's taller than our car. So the water, and we were on a hill in a valley. Yep. So, this whole area was flooded, and I can only imagine, which buildings were destroyed. And, the damming that they do, they create, like, there's a town in Connecticut called Stevenson, and it used to be much bigger, but when they created this dam, a large part of it flooded, and it's now allegedly, if you believe in the mystery or the conspiracy or the folktale, that there's a town under a lake now, right? And I'm sure this is the type of story you'll hear in many places around New England, and I'm sure the United States. It's
so fabricated that once you look into it, it's like if you went and picked up a dozen eggs and you cracked them and there's nothing in them, but you didn't notice because the cardboard box was so heavy. It's kind of that kind of feeling. You wake up in the morning, you go to work, and you look up and there's airplanes. What are they doing? Making clouds. What the heck's going on here? What happened that we can't just have clouds? Okay, well, scratch my head on that and let that one go, right? Then you go downtown to register your vehicle or, bail somebody out of jail, or any of these number of things, particularly in Des Moines. If you look at Des Moines, I'll see if I can find it, but it might take me a minute. If you look at Des Moines, it's relatively similar to the way it was 100 years ago. There hasn't been like a conflagration or a fire or any of these crazy things here. Speaking of conflagration, rather, let's go ahead and show you what I'm talking about here. This is supposedly in 1871. Okay. The crazy thing is when you pull up the videos, sorry about that. You pull up the videos of 1906, or it's like 2 days prior to the 1906 Great Fire, and they're rolling down whatever street it is. I can't recall off the top of my head. I've been a little bit too deep in the wormhole here. I mean, look at this. Is just desolation. This is insane.
Wow.
And so in 30 years, supposedly, they went from that to...
What year was that? It said
that was in
8th and 9th of what year?
Let's see here. Let's take a look. 8th and 9th of 1871. So this is 35 years prior to the fire. Okay. And somehow, magically, I mean, just insanely fast and accurate and beautiful and just geometric and just, wow, just insane architecture. It just pops right on up. And here we go. Let's take a look at Chicago from the Great Park. And you'll see some angles here that are reminiscent of, I don't know, snowflakes or bastion forts even. And if that's popped up for you, you'll see those angles on the sidewalks or what have you, whatever that is. Now, how many bricklayers would it take to lay all those bricks that quickly, lay in the lighting, the cable, everything? And this is, let's see what I can't. The one thing that I'll notice is they'll tell you a date on the summary of the picture. A lot of the time, if you can see the date stamp on the picture, it'll be different. But a lot of the time, it's to form a narrative. I mean,
right. So is your suggestion that these towns were created out of a material that was easily burnt and then they lit it all on fire and replaced it, or they used the fake fire as a hoax to explain, why these buildings look so magnificent? Like, oh, look, we just built them using the most recent technology because everything was destroyed in a fire. I mean, because from my understanding, we have, all these brick buildings. Brick, I don't believe, is something that can go up in flames. Am I
right? And they say fireproof on a lot of the hotels. If you still go to some older towns, I grew up in a harbor area in Los Angeles, and there are plenty of brick buildings that say fireproof, storage, things like that. And they're just that same red brick, the same style windows, the same style peaks and valleys in the penthouses. Basically, they went from the spire type Romanesque architecture, and in 35 years, about 35 years, went to all red brick. Similar architecture, same kind of arches, smokestacks, that sort of thing. You'll notice that the skyline's hazed out, so you can't see further down where the Moorish style buildings are. And by Moorish, I mean what we would consider the original African Americans. This is the oldest indigenous civilization in America, or in the world, rather. And they're recognized through the United Nations as such, and it's out of Louisiana. And they are not Indians. They're not, Native Americans as we know them. They are of African descent, essentially, what we would call genetically African. Okay, so the Bayou is a little bit of a different place than we're led to believe. And it really kind of goes just off the rocker, man. It's insane. I've not stopped finding information that's contradictory to the things that are said on like the Smithsonian channel. You throw your YouTube on and throw that on. Oh man, is it ever fun to look at this and then turn and look at the stories that they've got about these things, like the mound builders. Okay. Now the Serpent Mound's one thing. That's its own kind of architecture, art, monument. However, when you've got something that's dug out and they're finding tunnels underneath and all kinds of just insane things, statues that are probably 50, 60 feet tall, the detail is just immaculate, like almost down to, man, I'd say the fingerprint. If you've ever seen one in person, it's just beautiful. And they're ceramic. So would they serve a purpose? I would imagine so, especially if you've got it sitting on top of a gold, brass, copper sphere that's got an antenna coming out of the top. you're going to generate some form of static, and it is going to ground itself, and it is going to provide a charge or a polarity to your red brick, which is essentially an insulator. It's kind of works the way silicone does. Now the holes in the red brick, they thread steel or tin or different things through depending on what they had around. But if you look at the really ancient buildings, man, it's crazy. The cathedrals, for example, in France, the Arc de Triomphe in France is a good one just to kind of get a real close look at what's going on with the world and what they're trying to tell you. Because basically they're trying to tell you, hey, we built this arch for people to walk under when they come back from Napoleon's War, right? So just the size is insane. There we go. So we'll take a look real quick and just, to show everybody that that has to have a purpose. That is massive. That is the size of, I don't even know what. I don't think I've ever seen anything so big. Even the temples of Karnak are not this big. They're not this detailed. They're not this symmetrical or geometric or beautiful for that matter. I mean, we're kind of taught that beauty comes from symmetry, and I'm really big on looking into the golden ratio and how it fits into our world and our lives. The number 3, the number 6, the number 9. If you look into Nikolai Tesla, he'll kind of beat around the bush. Well, all things in the universe are vibration, frequency, and what's the other word I'm looking for? I know you know it. But so good vibes, that's more meaningful than
holographic. Is that what your everything in the world is fractal, is energetic? I mean, there's so many things.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if you've ever delved into the inner world, like with, say, a shamanic supplement, but there are things going on that we just don't have the eyes to see. If you look at the eyes through a bumblebee, you'll see flowers in a different light, right?
Energy.
And it's just, and it makes my hair stand on end just talking about good vibes and just relaying that, because I know somebody out there is going to pick up on this and go, you know what? Yeah. Why do I need to be angry, upset, depressed, fearful when I can stop and just tell myself, don't do it. Meditate a little, give yourself a little chant whatever makes you happy, ride that vibe, because that's what's going to save your soul, man. None of this, hey, let's go get poked and shake hands and go to a pool party for free and all this other, fly across country for $35. I mean, it's pretty tempting, man. I'm not going to lie, but it just comes with so many bad vibes and negative energy. And, and that's just part of it. All of our media structure, our learning systems, now mostly digital, being a parent, it's very difficult to look at the implementation of these monitoring systems. Basically, they're putting on children at school with their Chromebooks and their online learning and their virtual world that they live in. Basically, I feel like we've gotten so small as far as dimensions or mathematics are concerned that the next step is to go not within ourselves, but to dive into something even smaller, which is the micro world of ones and zeros. It's digital. When they went from analog to digital, man, they really, really rocked the boat, and everything's been different since. I don't know if you've noticed, but man, since like 2008, 2009, when they started that transition, it's just been pure fear. It's been pure anger, pure hate, pure racism. I mean, there was once upon a time when every single race got along, man. Every single race. And, I'd hate to do it, but could probably pull up a site that'll help us out just a bit and see if I can't just demonstrate that everybody got along at one point. And then all of a sudden, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Bach saga, but that one's a doozy, man. It's definitely something to look into.
Yeah, we've done an episode with Dan from Rising from the Ashes podcast.
Right. Yeah, and they did a stellar take on it, man. And you know what? I've gone through it top to bottom, listened to just kind of the generalization of why and how. And while I don't lean hard into it like if it were a religion or a state of understanding or believing, I do see it as a tool. And I think that that's really what it was meant to be, is a tool for enlightenment, a tool to allow you to look deeper within yourself. I really do believe that at one point we didn't have a language as we know it. We didn't have syllables, or our tongue didn't touch the top of our mouths. It was just pure energy. We didn't need to talk because we understood each other. And that was all just wiped away. How, why? Not completely sure. Kind of stuck in it, kind of wondering. But, to try and look into this and not get, down on yourself and not get spiritually or emotionally depleted is a crazy difficult thing to do. And so reaching out to people, talking to people about these things, we can have a chuckle or two, but when you break it down, it's just a way to be aware of yourself, of what's going on around you. And let's see if I can't get this pulled up here. In the meantime, so basically you'll see across the country, man, we've got rivers that take angles that are just unnatural. They'll just kind of hit a 45 real fast and right back. And maybe there'll be an S curve. And it just so happens there's one side of a city on that side and one side on that side. Like kind of St. Louis is a good example. Keokuk, Iowa, oddly enough, comes to the top of my head. And strangely enough, in San Pedro, California, they call the harbor canals. And this is as of like 1880 or somewhere earlier than that one. It's just wood sailing ships on wooden docks. And you're going, well, how did they dredge out canals between, a rocky shoreline? You've got maybe a mucky bottom or something. But this is just when steam power's coming out. And they're calling them canals. And they run all the way into the harbor and they come all the way around. A vast majority of that stuff was there when they got there, man. It's like waking up one day and going, hey, your house is over here. Your house is over here. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie Home, where they kind of at the end up in that oddly circular, oddly snowflake shaped kind of area. And she finds her mom at a little information booth or whatever. I really do think that they're telling us things with every freaking, oh man, pardon my language there. I don't know if that flies or not, but we try to keep it down to a minimum in my house. Things get out of control. But you look into this, a lot of the movies, music, even something like Black Hole Sun. If you break that down and vibe on it and think about the esoteric and hidden history, if you look into it deep enough, man, it's all a simile. It's all a metaphor. But if you're willing to open your mind, you can find things in absolutely everything. Red Hot Chili Peppers, blatantly obvious. Dreams of Californication. California, there was nobody there prior to like 1890. It was just sparse. They were advertising beaches. Same thing with Florida. So you had people coming up in through New York, right past the Statue of Liberty, which again, I don't know how the French were going to drag that across the water in a wooden steamship or even in an iron boat for that matter, let alone build it on a star fort. But they did, apparently. And right next to it, we have an intake station, which is a massive building where they brought the immigrants through. And I don't know what it was before, but it worked really well for administration for a lot of years. Now, a difficulty that I'm having at this particular point is where else to go with it? Because your average person, and geez, it must be about 75% of people I talk to. Just bringing up something like the Smithsonian Institute getting billions of dollars through this, act, and not even opening the doors, not even putting anything additional out online. Not all they've got is a channel now that just kind of narrates this ridiculous shell of a story. And you're kind of like, all right, well, what's going on there? They're like, well, let's fly over America and see what we can see. Oh, look at these hills and dales. And then they go over to Mount Rushmore, right? You see the nice, crisp presidential faces. And then if you really back up and you look at the rest of that rock structure, it looks kind of like maybe somebody else's face was up there at some point. Either that or maybe an animal or whatever was being revered at that particular point when it was essentially put there. You got giant bones, hidden, lost, given back to the Native Americans. And nobody talks about it. Nobody says anything. This is as recent as geez. Well, we still have sideshows. So, they're still here. People don't notice. Because it's not in the palm of their hands. It's not on Google. If you say, okay, Google, how many giants live in the world? And they'll say, well, giantism, blah, blah, blah. And they'll go on about a disease and so on and so forth. But they won't share with you that there was a culture here, everywhere, all around the world. A culture where essentially the bigger folks dominated, ruled, and dictated what the smaller folks did. And apparently there was somebody that didn't like that, or somebody that, kind of like the box saga says, got stuck under an ice cap, drinking tea at 4 p.m. to stay awake until who knows how long, because, no melatonin, man, it'll deplete you. And they pop out all of a sudden. And then there's this Black Plague, Black Death. There's, the East India, the Dutch East India Trading Company, the Dutch East India Trading Company, so on and so forth. These are all your major, this is Walmart, this is Amazon. These are the people that are dictating what the consumer does. And that's essentially all we are. We're just feeding the machine. You step out of line, what happens? Your reputation is just trashed, or you just kind of disappear off of the face of media or the internet. And, it's one of those things that it can be startling. It can kind of scare you into keeping your mouth shut, really. I mean, I've been looking into some weird stuff since probably 2010. And man, for it to be 11 years later and finally be having a conversation that's relevant to what's going on, as opposed to, well, on the red carpet tonight, Jim Carrey, who I think is just amazing. He's a wonderful guy. He's the only star out there that's really speaking his mind and telling it how it is. He just plays characters. That's all he does. And he knows it, and he puts it out there, and he makes little quips and things that if you really read into him, you'll find out that he's probably just as sick of it as the rest of us are. So, it's not just us little people that punch the clock or dig the holes or grow the corn. It's the people up top, man. They're really starting to see what's going on. I do think there was something kind of irregular, we'll say, about the whole lockdown situation, the way that the Navy decided to dock a hospital ship in New York, which has massive underground. It's an underground city, essentially. Same thing with Washington, Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Diego. All of these cities are built on top of another city. And they tell you, oh, it's just the basement, subfloor. It's just a Roman bath, or, oh, it's just ruins. We're just going to build on top of it. Like, story I heard growing up in school about 1906 fire in San Francisco was, well, it's because they built on a landfill. It's like, okay, you're going to build a, I don't know, 15, 20, sometimes like 50-story buildings. And these stories are huge. The doors are massive. They're 12 to 15 feet tall. You got buried windows. You've got just amazing architecture, complete with statues and little miniature details that have little, wire-ish looking points, gargoyles even, we'll say, I've noticed a lot of owls. This is kind of interesting to me. There's a movie out there, I think it's like The Fourth Kind or something like that. It has, what's her name from Fifth Element in it? But basically, the owl is a sign of knowledge, of a hidden knowledge, okay? And it's also on the flag of Tartaria. That's their alternate flag. And it's
concerning gargoyles, I mean, this is something that I have noticed but haven't really thought much into. But you're saying that gargoyles are a part of this pattern? I mean, would you say that have you looked into the symbolism of a gargoyle?
Well, essentially, it's a pagan thing. That's the only word I can use that really kind of reflects the current paradigm. I mean, that's part of why all the cathedrals were taken over, why they tore all those massive pipe organs out. And a lot of these cathedrals had gargoyles on them or owls perched up top. It wasn't just a ball on top of a vase looking thing. They had a figure there. And on that figure, they represented who they were. They represented their souls. They were unique to the person who manufactured or made them. And I don't know how they carved out of marble, porcelain. I mean, there are massive kilns and firing pits and that they found in places like Germany, Russia. And we're talking the size of, a small city, huge places where you could fire just about anything in your home. You could make out of porcelain and fire it in these ovens, and it would come right on out, just like the facade on the front of the Capitol building, any Capitol building, you name it. Look at Iowa, look at Washington, D.C., you'll see a facade. And it's always got kind of a happy-go-lucky feel, you know, warm, touching, kind of happy, just blissful kind of emotion, because everybody's, you know, blissfully laying around with each other or dancing or different things like that. And then when you see these gargoyles, you see these faces on them and the snarls, and each one's different, you know, similar to the general's army that they found in his tomb in China, the Qin dynasty or whatever. I'm drawing blanks right now because it really is worldwide. There are star forts in Japan. There's star forts in India. There are star forts in Boston. I mean, it's just insane. And then they go, well, you know, all this waterways, all these lakes, that's just because the glacier receded and tore everything out, you know, the Grand Canyon. Yeah, you know, that river ran for so long, it just kind of cut through it. Have you tried pouring water down a dirt hill and see how long a stream takes to eat it away? It'll take some time, man. And I don't think that there's been that long since the last time we were wiped off the face of the planet or driven underground. The Hopi Indians, they've got stories. Every single nationality, Aboriginal group has stories of having to retreat underground, having to seek safety, having to minimize so that they could survive. We're talking recently, and I mean, look at what we've done in America by pushing everything that was here away and out, the buffalo, the natives, so on and so forth. And I really do feel like the buffalo were there to sustain the entire population of the country. They didn't have these factory farms. They had the plains, you know, which were essentially covered in mud and grew grass on them. So yeah, underneath there are star forts. You can look at Iowa, Ohio. Ohio's the big one. You've got a lot of different things going on there. It's just amazing. It's absolutely amazing. There's so much here, and so much time can be spent viewing these things and, you know, accumulating knowledge and the vision of what the world is and was. But unless you can share that with somebody, it's lost. You know, it's just lost in the ether. I mean, I might as well meditate it to the because that's all there is to it. If it's just me talking about it in my room by myself, or, you know, to a relative or something. But if you can reach somebody and give them a little bit of hope, you know, a little bit of a good vibe, change their day for the better based on what you know about the world that may be horrible or different or misunderstood. You know, if you could share a story with someone that says, hey, check out this book. It's called The Smithsonian Contribution to Knowledge. And in the advertisement, and it's called advertisement in the front. It's not an index. It's not a preface. It's an advertisement. That's exactly what they call it. And it's just absolutely amazing that you can pull this information up and you can see it for yourself, and then watch something on TV that's made by the same organization that states completely contrary information. It's just mind blowing. It's awesome to look into. It's a fun time. And I'm just stoked to have been able to share it with you, man.
I have some pictures in New Haven, Connecticut. Let me show you some photos here. Let's see. All right, folks, check it out. I'm gonna share it right now. How big is it? Is it big? Can you see it?
Oh yeah. Oh wow. Yeah. Yeah. That's the, I don't know, you might say Turkish, Moorish cathedral type of feeling here.
Right. So
yeah,
we zoom in on this. Let's see if I can zoom in on this. This right here, where my pointer is, there's like two women goddess naked breasts.
Oh yeah. Just
wings.
Absolutely beautiful, symmetrical. Just, oh man, it really gives you an ethereal, deep, tingly kind of uppity vibe. Like I would feel great driving through that, walking through that little bit of a tunnel, just based on, man, look at that. It's gorgeous.
All right.
It screams beauty, you know, and that's going to be like a Moorish or cathedral type style. Everything's decorated. Everything is immaculate. Everything is even, huge. So awesome, man. I just wish that sometimes, or who knows, maybe I have been back in those days or back in that particular timeline, sometimes I really think that we've got some kind of a shifting.
So, all right, check this out. So, see where I'm pointing at, you see the goddesses that I was telling you about. They're the wings. Yep. Now, this building on the other side here, we can go and look. Hopefully, it came up. This is the building that the Skull and Bones, right?
Yeah.
The Skull and Bones is. Let's see, where is it? Oh God, this is not.
You know what? This is a plethora of everything that is lost to us or hidden from us. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, look at one DuckDuckGo search, and you can find all this.
Oh yeah, but if you try Google, you're not going to get nothing. And everybody's got a Google built or Apple or Siri, and nobody.
So here's the building right here. Check it out. So this is the tomb on High Street where Skull and Bones allegedly. But if you look here, in this photo, you see that whole structure that I was just pointing out wasn't there. So that's completely new structure, right?
Oh, yeah, look up top there. Look at the just the simple planning. I mean, it's even, it's symmetrical, but there's no positivity to it. There's no warmth there.
Oh, this is very utilitarian, almost like kind of dauntingly Abrahamic, it's very
absolutely. It's dystopian, like crazy, that's
so you
like
were talking
brother's
about
house,
you were talking about the facades. This is the New Haven courthouse. Okay.
Right. What does that have to do with the law? You know what I mean?
Look at the facade here. I mean, this is something I've pointed out, and obviously folks know that Skull and Bones is in the same town that we see here, where look at that. I mean, it's very pedophilic, if you ask me. It's kind of hard to see from this clarity, but if you look at it in person, you can see that these are boys, and these are supposed to be Roman gods or whatever. So, I definitely think that we need to have a larger degree of discrimination. Like this to me wouldn't be Tartarian. I really just don't.
No, not at all.
This would be something that's like,
this is
obviously
Tartaria kind of
Roman.
Oh man, this is after they came out of the, from under the ice shelf and hell up there.
But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I mean, I'm just, looking.
That's about as close as I can get to it as Box Saga, man. I mean, it's maybe use it as a metaphor or, some kind of a vague, a simile, but man, something happened. Something happened maybe 3, 4, maybe even 500 years ago, like this researcher was talking about, where all of a sudden you had disharmony, you had, despair, you had tons and tons of people, tons of kids, infantoriums. That's just right there is mind blowing. I understand the need for childcare, but to tote them around as if they're a sideshow, it's a little bit much and a little disturbing, but we can get to that another time.
Right. Well, that facade, I mean, I was just pointing out the strange architecture there, because it's like, okay, at face value, what does that mean? To me, it symbolizes, this sort of secrecy that goes along with the town itself, and the courthouse kind of maybe protecting those who are interested in that kind of crime. I mean,
right.
It's disturbing, but it's also, it would make sense considering the university and the churches and everything going on. But this is Hill House, and what I showed you just now, this is 88 Hill House Avenue in New Haven, Connecticut. This is the former home of George H.W. Bush, a building I've been in myself. So, I mean, there's definitely a lot of strange architecture in New Haven. This is the what do they call it? City Hall. Sorry, City Hall there. And I mean, just in this one place, you can see so many strange features, and I just wonder what the place looked like before these other skyscrapers got in there. And you can only imagine, like, look at this, sorry,
you gotta really dig into the archives, and then the pictures are so grainy and
well, this picture, the
Look at how
or what is it called?
they tear down the resolution so you can't even zoom in on it, man.
It's a postcard, but I mean, with the amount of trees on this street alone, those trees are still for the most part there on Hill House Avenue. But
and they're very young trees. They're only 30, 40 feet tall at most.
Right.
So,
but I'm wondering like what the landscape looked like when, it was just like the Tartarian buildings that were allegedly taken over. And then which buildings in between are, just modern, because this is the theory that we're dealing with, right? I mean, this is part of your research. We're talking about buildings that were here already, and groups like the Freemasons came along and said, no, this is, we built this and this is how we built it. And don't ask any questions about the giant bones. Don't ask any questions about, anything else, because we're here now, and that's all that matters.
Absolutely. It's crazy to think that there's that much effort put into keeping a simple truth from people. The truth is there's more to life than what we have right now, than what we see, than what we know. And, giving us little tidbits of information, things like Mars and space, and we get into that whole thing another time. That's pretty fun stuff, but they throw that at us as a distraction from the things that are right in front of us, the people that are right in front of us. You've got, like I was saying, the oldest indigenous civilization. I'll pull that up real quick for you here. And in order to be the oldest indigenous civilization, that means you're here, you were settled, you were civilized, you had your people, you had your buildings, you had everything set up. You were recognized by the UN as basically the go-to, as the first person, the first group of people, rather. And see if I can pull that up real fast for you. And in the meantime,
about the Moorish people that you mentioned earlier in Louisiana.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Now, when you say they're recognized by the UN, when did that take place?
Oh, it was like 1990. Let's see here, 1990 something. We'll see if we can't get that pulled up. See, now Wikipedia's got some different stuff going on. And that's the thing you run into when you get into the world of digital entertainment. It's not even information. It's just, it's just what it is. I mean, it breaks down, man, you Google it or Bing it and it's just garbage. It's, the Evangelians or the people from space or the Indians, the Spanish, it gives you everything. But if you go ahead and go to, I'll see if I can pull it up without kind of disclosing it, and people can look it up if they want to. If you want to throw it in the show notes there, it's a really valuable piece of information, and it's very well written, very well researched. It's
send it.
Lifting the Veil of Illusion, piercing.
Oh, it's all right. Yeah, send it in the chats.
Piercing the Veil of Illusion. Okay, all one word.
This is,
and of course, you're not going to. It's Piercing the Veil of Illusion. And this really resonates, man. I mean, when the hairs on the back of your neck stand up reading some of this stuff, some of it's really out there, but it rings true. It rings so much truer than, the Afghans are pouring into Canada because Fidel Castro Jr. is allowing it, and COVID this and fly an airplane that, and you know what I mean? Inflation and war and chaos. It just rings so much truer. And, you take a look at it and man, it's mind blowing. Everything here is on point and she's got it done so well. It's all here. I don't know how many years she spent putting this together, but, I mean, it's taken me years just to find out about the local situation, the viaducts, the Romanesque architecture, things like, especially the Capitol building or the White House. There are pictures of them digging out the Capitol building and they're saying they remodeled it. Why are you going to stack sand up next to a building if you're remodeling it and you got scaffolding? You're not going to do that. It's just not how it works. So anyway, Piercing the Veil of Illusion, a lot of fun stuff to look into. By fun, I mean, take it easy, read a couple headers and then move on, for the day. You get so far into it, you're really going to kind of lose hope for humanity, because there's a lot of really negative energy out there. And there's a lot of things in the past that have happened that are just, downright negative and no fun to hear about, no fun to be around. It's absolutely mind blowing. Now, when you look at other things like technology, there's stuff we can get into there. The entire airline industry, there's a lot of stipulations, a lot of, draw blank again. There's a lot of ideas out there that essentially these Airbuses, some of the larger ones, they're not running on fuel when they're up there. This is kind of spreading as the word right about now. And if you look into the physics of a jet engine, if you get to a certain point of compression, you do not need anything but air, period. It's what the SR-71 runs on. It's called a scramjet or a ramjet. You get a turbofan and you turn it up even higher and you add certain technology to the back end of it, and it will just run on air. Now they're charging you fuel surcharge. They're charging you luggage. They're charging you this, that, and the other. Meanwhile, they're dumping aluminum all over you and telling you to have a good day, and fly safe. And it's just, everything's upside down. We're an opposite day. It's kind of like a episode of Garfield. Someone sent me to, Timbuktu or something? Cause I don't know where I'm at sometimes anymore. And, moving out from the West Coast, right? Come to the West Coast. We've got just beaches and bungalows. Everything's kind of 1-2 stories aside from, downtown. You get downtown and you don't really see too much of red brick anymore, unless you're going down towards, like, let's say the Market District, things like that. And, it's kind of sad because there are pictures of Los Angeles that show a bustling, massive architecture, just beautiful, beautiful stuff. And it's all gone now. Like that Redondo Beach photo I showed you there. This is kind of an interesting one. Let's see if I can just pop this one in real fast. I know we got a lot of things going on, a lot of stuff popping up. All right. Did that work? I am drawing a blank. All right. Apparently I'm sharing. I guess it says I do.
Right. And this is part of the theory, building these brick buildings or destructible buildings on the fault line. So earthquakes would come in and destroy them, sort of like reset cities. But
right. They just didn't run the steel reinforcement through, or basically just threw them together. Use the bricks from the last building, stack them up, come out with something that looks like kind of a half building, or maybe like a little town hall, a little short building here. But if you look at the Chicago skyline here, it's amazing because you've got that big park, that huge park right there. And that's just absolutely massive. Some of these buildings are like probably 50 stories, maybe 25 for some of the smaller ones. But if you get up close, they've all got stairs that lead up to a second floor. If you go inside, the lobby will always have stairs along the side that go down. Okay. And this is, like I was saying, just about everybody's town hall. You go to Los Angeles, you go to the courthouse, it's got a glass facade on it, right? And looks a little bit more modern. Maybe they sandblast the stone to make it look clean and neat. But so here's the conflagration again. I think I finally got this down. But it's amazing. It's amazing what we're told, what we're supposed to believe.
Are you sharing your screen? I don't think.
There we go. Did that pull?
There we go.
Yeah, so that's the configuration. I don't know why it's not sharing each one, but let's see. That's an orphan. Let me find one that's really relevant, like small town or group. And it's again, just about every small town. So we'll go with this one. This looks okay. Let's find out where we're at here. Of course, it's super tiny in the corner. It's going to be somewhere in the Midwest. So we'll just pop that up real quick. And it's just about every major or capital in the Midwest here. This is Waterloo, Iowa. Okay, so you've got the utilitarian style, like we were talking about, buildings. And then if you look over to the far side of the screen on the left, I don't know if it's reversed. I hope it's not. But you see kind of a domed building. It's got some Moorish architecture. There's a lot of that going on in the Midwest. Certain areas are leaning a little bit more towards Moorish, onion domes, high arch windows, as opposed to like a bay window, or they generally have some kind of decoration on top. The dome's usually covered in some kind of conductive metal, whether it be brass. Not a lot of brass from what I understand. It's going to be primarily copper. and gold. Here in Des Moines, Iowa, we've got a Capitol building that supposedly has something like 6 or 7 pounds of gold plating on the top of it. And you don't do that for fashion. You don't do that for beauty or just to look at. That's a lot of money to throw on top of a building when there are other materials that will do the job better. And I mean, you just see this stuff everywhere. Here we go. This is an interesting one. And there's small towns, little small town America, Keokuk, Iowa. And you see this main street everywhere you go, everywhere in the Midwest. Every time you step out of California, Nevada, get a little bit east of the Rockies, you're going to see this layout, this perfect cracker box, some of which are leaning a little bit towards underground. Some of them have stairwells that go down the side. So it makes you wonder how many times they've reused these things and just thrown people in or taking people away or whatever the case may be. All they've got to do is tell people, hey, something's going wrong. We got to save you. You know, we've got to save you. And people listen, man. We are a race of followers and we do what we're told. And with the amount of technology, the influence of advertisement, propaganda, I mean, it's absolutely amazing what they've done since World War II with propaganda. Even prior to that, I mean, how do you get an entire population and give them the drive to go and kill themselves and others? You know, that's insane. MK Ultra was just a show. It was just something to show the public to say, yeah, we did that and maybe we won't do it anymore. But they've been doing it since essentially the beginning of the timeline we know. I think Alexei Flamenco, he's in the ballpark. I really, really do think he's in the ballpark. I just don't know that that's completely accurate. The missing 1,000 years, that makes sense. But I do think that there is something sinister afoot. You know, I mean, it's like a James Bond movie or The Simpsons where Mr. Burns tries to block out the sun or any of these things. And you've always got trolley lines. Here's some else. These are small towns in middle America. They're right around the horse and buggies. And you got trolley lines everywhere.
Yeah. In my own hometown, there was a trolley line that went from close to where I live, Oyster River, all the way over to a place called Sabin Rock. And it's this big rock that kind of juts out of the ground on the coast near a beach. And it's definitely very interesting, you know, what you can find. You know, certain streets will reveal like where things were that are no longer there. But yeah, as far as this, you know, overall theory, I mean, how do you feel this connects, you know, ultimately to the Smithsonian Institute and what they've done to, obviously there's a lot of researchers out there who've shown that they've hidden the giant bones and
sure. Yeah, it's, you know, it's, I don't know that it's so much about what they've hidden. I really feel like it's more about what they've taken away. You know, they're not just covering the stuff up. They're digging it up and getting rid of it. They're creating literature, media, opinions. They're creating hysteria around certain topics and minimizing the others. They are taking away our past. They are driving us toward essentially, you know, being mindless, historyless, nameless, soulless beings. That's what they want. And hey, who can blame them, right? Humans are flawed. We're inherently flawed, but some of us have an opportunity in our lives, maybe once in a while, maybe all the time, depending on your situation, to experience what it is to be a person and what it is to have a soul and what it is to connect and to vibe and to enjoy and smile and laugh and live and love. Right. And these institutions are set up primarily to keep you nose deep in that book or in that Library of Congress website. And I mean, they've got me a few nights, man, where I'm like, oh man, it's 5 a.m. already. I'm just surfing the web, you know, they've got it figured out, man. It's all set up to eat up your time, make you sound nuts. But when you look at this is Clarinda, Iowa. Okay. And it's a hospital for the insane. If you look at the architecture, this is a massive castle type, just beautiful, beautiful plantation type. I mean, you can't even, there's no name for it in English because they've screwed our language up so bad that we cannot express beauty or function or purpose properly. I mean, just to turn this into an insane asylum is just a slap in the face to the people that were here before, it's a beautiful place. Don't get me wrong. If I were nuts, I wouldn't mind being there. But again, it's, and then to have movies out like, 13 Ghosts and, all these other things where you got a crazy person in insane asylum goes nuts, murders a bunch of people, ghosts come back. Like, yeah, a lot of these places have negative energy. They have vibes. There are voices that will reach out to you. There are things that will connect with you in these places around these energies because it's so profound. Something so drastic and dramatic happened that, I mean, if you've ever gone and walked down railroad tracks in the middle of America, it is not a fun feeling. It's different. The hairs on the back of your neck stand up, not on the tracks, of course, but like right next to them. Something about railroad tracks, man. They were all here before too.
And I think there's possibly ley lines is something to do with that. I mean, we have this,
ley lines
connection to Tesla and the energy of the earth.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's, our connection with Gaia or our world or earth or whatever you'd like to call where we are this moment, there just aren't words for the vast spiritual context of what existence is. There just aren't words. And it's unfortunate. You find words sometimes in like Japanese or say Inuit, have several words for snow, for caring, for kindness, because you need the difference. You need to know the degree. You need to know, the tenacity of the emotion. How aggressive is that emotion, And we just don't have that. And we're told to forget about it. It's just a movie. It's not real. Things like that. I mean, look at the mind-blowing one, man, is essentially every Disney movie ever made. Strictly propaganda brainwashing, but it teaches you to dismiss anything ethereal, magical, fantastic. Look at Rapunzel's tower, right? If I could get my phone to pull up on my computer, I've got a picture of a tower. I can't tell where it's at, but it's definitely interesting. Let's see if I can't get into that real quick and show you. And it's mind blowing because this is a real place and we're just told this is all fantasy. We're brainwashed. We're all just subject to the same game. Some of us snap out of it early. I've got friends that are, 18, 19 coming out of college. And by going to college, they're basically shown lies and how to lie and how to manipulate. And they do. But if they're awake to it, some of them become very, very positive, very vibrant people and influence not just the people around them, but the energy around them. And I think that this is what was going on prior to whatever destroyed or whatever ended the last paradigm. So we'll just call it the last paradigm shift, right? I know Ari Aselin's got some information about the specifics of how and things like that. And, that's part of the thing that I kind of just don't get into too much. I just want to know the why and the vibe behind it. The technology is obviously intriguing, especially when you look at mud fossil, man. A lot of those are legit, man. I'm not going to lie. If you look at them, they look like a melted Moorish building or a melted Capitol building, just drooping, or a statue just drooping. It's like, oh, look at this place, this cave underground. And over in the corner, there's like a face and like, bird. And you're like, wait a minute, turn the contrast down just a little bit. And then all of a sudden everything pops out and you're like, oh man, this is too much. I'm going to bed. I've had a little too much tonight. But that's the reality we live in. It's awesome. It's amazing. It's deep. It's spiritual. If you want to call it that, it's energetic. I think the best word that I've found for the vibe of the world that's positive is the primordial It's the only way I know to explain it. And that's just the word I would use. I have a personal preference as to how I would address what I call the source or what have you, not to take away from anybody's religion, belief, anything like that. It's just, there's so much more to it that we can't wrap our heads around it. If we can't understand the reality that we live in, what's in front of our faces, how are we ever going to dive deep enough in ourselves to understand the heart of nature, the heart of living, the heart of communicating, of connecting? We're just not going to. So leave the words alone, ride the vibes in those moments, and just go along for the ride. I mean, there have been some situations, man, where I'm sitting, got the bells going, depending on the frequency, you'll get different, feelings, but you gotta love those Tibetan bowls, man. They are just absolutely phenomenal. And I never thought in my life that I would be sitting in a room for 3 or 4 hours, just humming essentially, and communicating and opening up. And I don't know if you call it downloading. A lot of people say, oh, I had a download, last night. I don't know that it's all that. It's a deep connection. And it's essentially what led me to contacting you. It led me in the direction I needed to go, felt like I wanted to be. I'm now in a relationship that's just amazing, in a place that's just beautiful, and we can sustain ourselves off of what we have, And in order to go from 9 to 5, punching a clock, pulling this stuff up on just podcasts while I'm working, to I'm going outside to brush the horses. I'm going out to, grab some alfalfa for them, or we're going to, put some fish in the pond, or all these things. We're going to grow a garden, different types of herbs, set it up online, make it organic. It's beautiful, beautiful things. And it all came from that primordial, that deep connection to ourselves, God. And if you want to call it that, that's kind of a 33, Freemason type of word I really don't like to use. It's kind of like the whole spherical earth thing. I think it's a bastardization of the golden ratio. It has nothing to do with symmetry and beauty. It's the opposite. If you look at it, it's completely opposite. You don't have the fractalization happening that you should. You don't have the energy generating that you should. How are you going to have a sphere that generates, 7.82 hertz? It doesn't make sense. It just, the mathematics don't make sense. It would reverberate and it would not happen. I don't know. I've dug a little bit hard into a lot of technical things. And when you break it all down and spend the time to connect with yourself and try to understand deeply what's going on, it can be overwhelming. But if you learn to humble yourself before it, to slow down, oddly enough, it winds you up something fierce, man. But if you learn to slow down and breathe, things happen and you notice them and you enjoy them. And regardless of what type of building you're in, if you're in, and you go in these courthouses, man, they've got a weird vibe, old buildings, old marble buildings, the dome tops, and usually some kind of statue on the front. A lot of the ones have the statue of the lady holding the staff with the snakes and the ball at the top. This is an alchemical symbol, essentially, for a mercury vortex engine. Let people look that up. That's a fun wormhole to go down. Take a look at that, see what you end up with. It goes all crazy directions, man, I'll tell you. But the biggest thing about that is you take a couple thermometers and power everything in your bedroom almost. It's mind-blowing what is taken away from us. Not just hidden, taken away, whitewashed over, and presented as a Disney movie or Avatar. Avatar rings some bells too, man. And that's a whole nother 2-hour conversation on silica life and, our previous possible connection to what we now call Earth. It may have been a lot more than that. And I think that's why a lot of people felt very deeply about the situation in that movie and what was going on. And they capitalize on our emotion, on our positive state when it comes to things that resonate, things like the Addams Family, things like the Munsters. They were the weird family at the top of the hill, right? That had that weird old architecture building with the gate and all the iron and all the big statues in their little private cemetery. And everything was connected with like a walkway or a fountain, just beautiful stuff, but weird people, right? Stay away from them. Stay away from those weirdos at the top of the hill with the grandpa that's doing experiments downstairs. I mean, if grandpa's doing experiments, he must have some kind of power going on, right? So just put 2 and 2 together. Sometimes allow yourself to kind of drift when you're watching a movie. And hey, if you got to, just talk to, your spirit guide or your plant spirit guide. If you've got one of those that you tend to go toward every day, and that's always a beautiful thing. There are a couple that are a little iffy sometimes. You got to be in the right state before you get involved with those, particularly like a datura is one I would say use extreme caution. Extreme caution if you're ever going to connect with that plant spirit. You need to make sure you have respect, and you need to make sure that you follow a respectful shamanic tradition and you are fully involved with it. That's, again, where all this stuff has led me. It didn't lead me, into going crazy, ranting on the corner. It led me into finding myself. It led me into understanding what kindness and heart and meaning is. So for that, I guess I thank all the controllers or whatever's going on there for the ease of use of their facade factory, or, the ability to just see right through it. I've been to Hollywood studios, it looks just like all the crap you see in downtown Los Angeles or wherever else. It's all the same. And I kind of thank them for that. Oh, Fantasia. There you go. That's the one. He gets all the broomsticks just to flood the place, right? It's kind of leaning into, hey, what happened? How come there was a flood? Well, Mickey Mouse, started messing with that wand when the wizard was away. And before you know it, the mop sticks flooded the place. Hey, maybe that's what happened, man. It's a good enough answer for me. It sure beats a laser or energy weapon or harp. So I'll just lean towards Mickey Mouse,
Well,
it's a better vibe.
Yeah, I got to say, man, this has definitely been a lot to take in. I think we covered a bunch of cool things. But please, obviously you wanted to be somewhat incognito, but is there somewhere where folks can follow and follow you on Instagram or something like that?
You know what? I don't have an Instagram. I've hardly got a Facebook that I lean towards. I would say just go ahead and email me. I'll get back to you. My email is randomfracts, RANDOMFRATS, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Let's take a quick look. So obviously, I don't spend too much time doing anything other than just kind of diving in. So it gets a little bit murky in the file system in my computer here. So let's take a quick look. I've got it up here. Yep, it's randomfracts with an S, RANDOMFRATS, pardon me. Random Fracts. You'll figure it out. If you get someone else, it ain't me. It's not me. Sorry about that.
Right on. All right. Well, thank you for taking the time to join us.
Absolutely.
Share all this.
Yeah, appreciate you, man. And hey, I'm glad that our families think we're crazy.
Join us on the journey.
My heroes, thanks for listening. Aren't robot voices weird? You better join us on our Patreon if you want to see behind the scenes. Patreon.com/MFTIC. Join today.
I never said the things I said when I was out of my head, and you were out of your mind, or still inside, dancing between the lines of the universe. The way things come together is so divine, especially when track of time, crash and burn, like you never said a word to me, a word to me.
Thank you for listening to the My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast. We truly appreciate you. Now go enjoy a plate of spotted dick, get out the hash, some wacky tobacco and roll it up, light it up, smoke it up, baby.